welcome back to the All Pass podcast. In our first episode, we had a really amazing opportunity to talk with Colin Byros. If you haven't gotten an opportunity to check that out, please check that out on the link in description. We had a really special conversation with him. And today, we have a very, very, very special guest. We have Je'rod Cherry with us. Je'rod, thank you for being with us. Je'rod has an extensive history in sports. He had the opportunity to win 3 Super Bowls in the NFL. Currently works with the Cleveland Browns. He currently also hosts a show on ESPN 850 from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock with Emmett Golden. You can find that on the Land on Demand as well if you are a subscriber. If you're not, check out the Land on Demand. Je'rod, welcome to the podcast, sir.
Well, thank you for having me, Q.
Yeah, man, it's great to have you here. So to give people background first and foremost on how this relationship began, let me take everyone back to 2013. Q was a young man. I didn't know anything about life yet. I was a senior in college at Walsh University. And a good friend of mine, Ryan Gerard, he was an intern and he was working with the Really Big Show. So he's working with Riz, Hammer, and I think it was Chris Fedor at the time.
Right.
I think Casey was on the board.
Sounds
as well.
right.
And I asked Ryan, I said, hey man, you work at this ESPN, what is this about? I didn't even know there was an ESPN Cleveland branch. That's how out of tune I was. And he's like, yeah, I could probably get you an internship there. So I applied, had no expectations. I'm just a general communications major, Je'rod. I'm not public relations, I'm not HR, I'm not broadcasting, I'm nothing. So I got there and I started doing some of the screening of the calls, started doing some of the street team stuff. March Madness was big back then. You guys were going to Harry Buffalo on opening days. Riz and Hammer were going to, I forget the Irish spot for St. Patrick's Day that everybody was doing remotes at.
I know it was it wasn't the Gordon Square area, but I know it was on the west side of town.
So
and
like
it'll come back to me.
or something like that.
That's a good Irish name to throw out there, but I don't think it was that.
Something like that. And I don't know how it happened, but you were doing a show called 3 Deep with Will Burge and Emmett, who you still work with now. And for somehow, some way, I stumbled across working and screening calls for you guys. And as I was telling my man Adam on the way here, that there was something about your aura and about how you represented yourself that I was like, yeah, I want this guy as a mentor. And I will never forget what Will Burge told me one day. He's like, yeah, you know Je'rod, right? You know he won 3 Super Bowls? I was like, no, I don't know. I'm completely zoned out. And from the time that we met, which was 11 years ago, till now, our relationship has grown in ways that I could not imagine. And when I created this company, All Pass, with my best friend John, and I got done completing our mental fitness mentality manual, I sent the manual to you because I really wanted to pick your brain because I respect so much of how you carry yourself and what you say when it comes to sports and when it just comes to life in general. As I told Adam on the way up, I think there's a lot of people that when they listen to you from 3 to 6 on the next level, I've always heard you through 2 windows. So I've always heard you through the window of sports and just your expertise as a former athlete, as somebody that knows the locker room, that can transcribe things that the average fan is not going to get and understand. But if you listen to it from a life standpoint, I've always felt that you're giving so much knowledge about life to the listener. And the listeners aren't catching it. But if they listen for it, everything that you say about athletes, how they think, the things that they have to overcome, being an overcomer, having resiliency, having that self-reassurance within oneself, that self-belief, that can carry into fatherhood, that can carry into being an owner, that can carry into just being a teammate, that can just carry into life. And that's why I feel like it's such a privilege to have you here and just kind of pick your brain today.
Oh, thanks, man. Well, a couple of things you should know. The internship program has changed drastically.
I bet.
You just can't call a friend and say, hey, hook me up. Now they take you through an extensive interviewing process, and they actually pay them now.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't getting paid.
You were
back
not
then.
getting paid.
No, sir.
But let me quickly say this in regards to you, and thank you for the kind words. When I met you, and we called him Intern Q, and I still call you that. And if you look on my phone, it'll say Intern Q.
That's crazy.
As far as when you call in, because that was the label and name that we gave you. But it was like, okay, this is a young man who's a hard worker, good guy. You could just sense and feel that spirit about you to where you are very caring. And when we ask you to do things, you had no issue with it, and you wanted to learn on top of that. And you always want to work with people who are interested in gaining more and figuring out how they can be better. And I've watched you grow as a man. I've watched you go from being a guy in college with your longtime girlfriend. Now you guys are married and you have a family. That's a beautiful thing.
Thank you.
So it's been a neat decade plus a year watching you grow as well. And what you are doing and what you're trying to convey to the folks out there listening to this podcast is important information, because I can tell you too, I had my own hangups as an athlete and as a human being, as far as not dealing with things from a mental standpoint the right way. And knowing what I know now, it'd be a disservice to keep it to myself and not share with people the things that I went through, because I'm pretty sure what we're about to say will certainly help people take that next step as far as being the best that they can possibly be.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that Adam and I were talking about on our way up here is, and you and I were just talking before we hit the cameras on, was when I was a player, there were two phases that I struggled with the most when it came to my mentality. Is one, I was taught to respect my coaches. Always, my father always said, you respect the people in front of you. If your coach says it, you know, he comes from the generation, how high?
Right.
You know, you jump wherever the coach says, you go. And my high school coach was very demanding. And I remember my junior year, I lost the state final game. And in the state semifinal game, there was a whole bunch of melee. We had lost a regional final game to Mentor, and we were out. They played a couple of ineligible players. It got us back in after a PK shootout. So we were down in the dumps. Horrible. And all of a sudden, we're back in. We rode the bus. We played out in Findlay, Ohio. And we came in at halftime, and my coach told me this. He said, Q, you look like a deer in the headlights.
And he told you this at halftime?
At halftime. He's like, you need to snap out of whatever's going on, and you need to get up to the pace of the game. And I remember I couldn't find it, so I was on the bench. We ended up winning that game 5 minutes into overtime, probably the slowest goal in Jackson High School history I've ever seen in my life to send us to the state final. I ended up regaining myself. I started in the state championship, but I had lost his favor. So I ended up watching my team lose. And in that moment, I had this like intense hatred for my coach, but I was able to overcome that. That moment came back to me in college, right after we had met. I had transferred a couple of different schools. I had sat out of college soccer for a year, and I ended up playing for an English gentleman. And anybody that has come in contact with somebody outside the American culture, the banter and the way that folks communicate is different. What's normal to him almost sounds like mental abuse to us. But there was many times where he's just hounding you time and time and time again, to the point where he even took me out of my position and benched me. And I had to prove to him that you can put me anywhere on the field and I can compete. I did that, but in those moments, I really had a tough time finding myself, because now you're calling out my athletic identity, which is becoming personal to me. And there was not really any tools that I had at that time in my arsenal, in my identity formation, only to be competitive. In your journey, what were some of the tools that you found to overcome some of those hurdles to meet those goals for yourself?
Good question. And I would say, Q, I think all athletes at some level go through that, of having a coach or someone be a naysayer and a doubter of what you can and cannot do. That's part of the process. The question is, how do you get over that process? And so in high school, I had a similar situation. Even if I went back to, I played football starting around age 8 or 9. Even if I went back to what we call in California Pop Warner, I had coaches who doubted me. I had coaches who were like, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I really believe it's something straightforward and simple. You have to know for yourself. When I was 6 or 7, you'd ask me what I want to be when I grow up, I'd have flat out told you, I'm going to be a professional football player. Now, obviously, a lot of kids say that and mean that, but getting there is a whole nother paradigm in itself. But I can tell you this, in the moments where I had someone tell me you can't do it, I went in one ear and out the other. I really didn't listen to it. And then I got in trouble when I did respect that person highly and they had doubt and I listened to it, because I put them on this pedestal. Now, I'm not going to be the one to tell you don't not listen to coaches or disrespect coaches. Coaches are an asset. Now, there are levels of coaching. There are people who understand that the worst thing that you could do to a player is tell them in the midst of a competition not to screw up. guess what you're more likely to do? Screw up. I mean, so that's just nonsensical. But again, there's levels of coaching. Some are inexperienced, some experienced, and some are just stuck in their ways to where they don't have a panoramic view of the whole deal and don't get that, hey, part of this is, okay, what's best for him right now or her, and meeting them there as opposed to what's going to make me feel good because I'm being tense. Because what you were basically doing was stressing him out. And what he did was he took that stress and gave it back to you under the guise of, I got to snap him out of it, but that's not going to snap you out of it. If anything, it's going to make you tighten up. But back to the main question that you asked me, I'll tell the story of, and I've told it before, of I had a coach in high school whose son had played in the pros. And this coach one day told me, you're not good enough to play in college.
Dang.
And I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
I knew for myself, and it was the best thing. Like, I don't care what he's saying. And yes, his son is a professional athlete, and yes, he's a coach, but why am I going to take to heart what he has to say about me? Why am I going to let him define who I am? And when I take that perspective of not letting a man or a woman define who I am, but letting myself, or better yet, God define who I am,
right,
that's when I'm at my best. That's when I don't have to worry. That's when I'm not operating in fear and failure, especially fear of failure. Now, what happened with me, as I went higher and higher and the stakes got greater and greater, that's when I started worrying and concerning myself about what people thought, be it an agent, be it a magazine publication, be it a newspaper reporter, be it my teammates or a coach, because I was wrestling with, okay, this is my ticket out of poverty. This is my ticket to a better lifestyle, a better standard of living. And when you start putting those factors into it, and I would say for most kids in high school and college, okay, the thought probably is, okay, this is my ticket to D1 or D2 or D3, or this is my opportunity to be popular in school. If you go on the high school level, this is my way of getting my name. I used to say in the paper, but that doesn't really exist anymore. This is how I blow up on social media, right?
Yeah.
So, but when you start putting those type of thoughts into it and worrying about those things, then you care what people think and say about you. And if you start reading that stuff and just really getting your energy and your definition of who you are from what people say about you and to you, then you're going to be screwed because what? They're not controlling the narrative. They're not controlling how you feel as opposed to you.
Yeah.
So I had to learn, and I didn't always do this perfectly. I would struggle with it because, again, if you have someone to the level of an NFL head coach, because in your mind you're thinking, well, not even an NFL head coach. If this guy's in college and he's coaching, there's got to be something right about him, right? But guess what? Not everyone's perfect. Not everyone has it all figured out. And I don't even care if it's Bill Belichick or Andy Reid or John Harbaugh or John Gruden. And these are all coaches I played for. Or Mike Ditka or Jim Mora. They don't all have it figured out.
Right.
They don't. They're not perfect. But what we tend to do is think that they have it all figured out. And again, this is not disrespecting coaches.
Right.
This is not that. But there's a part of you that coaches do respect, and the great ones allow you to play itself out in that it allows you to fully be who you are and express yourself. Coaches will hold it against you if you don't have confidence, right?
Right.
But then they'll respect you if you do have it, right?
Right.
Now, you got to find that happy medium of, okay, I'm listening to what you say, coach, and I'm being a team player. I'm working hard. I'm giving effort. But there's some things a coach just can't coach. There's some moments where it's just on you as the athlete to go out there and take that chance and live with the consequences. And that's really what it boils down to. And in those moments, probably like me, when you were in that state, okay, we're in the state finals. I don't want to screw up. I don't want to blow things. What have we done? We've made the moment too big.
Yeah.
And we don't have to do that. You didn't trick nobody by being on that team. I didn't trick anyone by being on the teams that I was on. I didn't fool anyone. I worked hard to get there. You worked hard to get there. But then that self-doubt starts creeping in, and any little thing could be from a coach or a teammate can derail you if you let it. But that's where you got to have that identity, and it can become a bad thing too, because it can become out of control in the sense that you can be so confident and so focused on yourself that you become clueless with what's around you, and you don't want to be that either.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you find that balance of I believe in myself, I trust myself, I know I'm supposed to be here, but not become someone who's just self-absorbed, not become someone who's just a me guy and all about you. And if you find that balance, then you're on the right path, especially as an athlete, because there are going to be moments where you need to be a me guy. There are. Yeah. There are going to be moments where you need to say, you know what? I am shooting this goal. I am going to go after this interception. I am going to shoot this basketball as opposed to, I'm going to pass it. There are moments where you have to become that guy. Because who do we celebrate? Not that you're doing it for the celebration, but we remember the people who take the shot, not the person who's in the background. But at the same time, that's where it gets controversial again. What's wrong with being the guy in the background?
Nothing.
But we'll tell you from a societal standpoint.
Everything.
Exactly.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because, we were listening to the show yesterday, and when I try to have athletic conversations, I look at a lot of the documentaries that they're coming out with. So the QB series on Netflix, I'm watching the wide receiver series on Netflix. So like when I'm hearing you say some of this stuff, I'm thinking about some of the things I've heard Devontae Adams say, or from a Cleveland sports perspective, looking at like Odell and some of the things that we get so mad at these guys for, but that's what these guys need to be great to also handle the adversity that we as fans and as media and coaching say about them. They need that sense of, I know who I am at the end of the day.
It's almost a sense of entitlement, and we do our best to teach our children not to have a sense of entitlement. And again, it goes back to, all right, you may be this way on the football field, but in life, at home, you need to be a certain way. And I'm convinced one of the reasons why, especially with professional athletes, why the divorce rate is so high is that we have a hard time flipping that switch.
Yes.
That there's one way to be in a locker room athletic setting, and then there's another way to be in an academic or relational setting as far as that significant other is concerned, and making those switches. But there is definitely a part of you that has to have self-confidence. You cannot get there. Talent is only going to take you so far. And we talked about this before. The idea that I've seen guys who are way more talented than me who did not stand a chance making it to the next level because, simply put, they weren't mentally tough. They were easily goaded. They were easily derailed. They were easily manipulated. They were easily put in a spot to where I can't do this.
Right.
And I seen the person who had that lesser talent, but the right attitude of, I'm going to do this no matter what. I don't care what you say. I have to do this. Though their talent quotient would speak to the idea that they had no business even being in the National Football League. Yeah. But here they are. And there are always going to be exceptions to the rule. And that's the beautiful thing about the human spirit, is that your mind, if you put it, and granted, some people won't have a chance. If you're 4'11" and had no dribbling skills, good luck thinking you're going to make it in the National Basketball Association.
Right.
I mean, so we have to be realistic to a degree.
Sure.
But that didn't stop Spud Webb.
No.
If you know his story.
Yeah. Or Muggsy Bogues.
Or Muggsy Bogues, right. Or Nate Robinson, who's dealing with some stuff from a health standpoint right now. They didn't stop those guys. So there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. The thing is, you got to build your mentality up to the place to where you say, I am the exception to the rule. And to bring it full circle back to the coaching aspects of it, again, listen to your coach, taking from your coach what you need. But at the end of the day, you still have to be that individual out there, understanding that, hey, your coach can't make that play for you. Yeah. They can lead you to the water, but they can't make you drink it. That's where you have to be like, hey, I'm going to gulp this in or I'm going to sip it, or how my experience is going to be. But the coaches are definitely pivotal in your overall success. Don't get me wrong on that. But there's still going to be that next part to where you can't bail out and put it all on the coach. Where do you fit into this paradigm? Where do you fit into this idea of, okay, this is what I am going to accomplish as a player on this team, or if you're in an individual sport, this is what I'm going to accomplish as an individual. And that has to be your mindset, and you have to be focused on that and stay focused on that and let nothing deter you from that, especially your own confidence. Because the amazing thing about us, and you've experienced this as an athlete, I'm sure, is that self-doubt can be real, really real. And that really voice that we talk about in your head, it'll start barking at you. Yeah. But you literally have to say, shut up, and not listen to it. And that's coming from within. And that's the crazy part. This is from within, not from the outside. Sometimes within can be worse than what's on the outside.
I'd almost say within is probably worse than the outside, you know, because that's you 24/7.
Right.
You know, sometimes
It knows you, right?
yeah, it knows all the weaknesses, all the nooks and crannies. It's funny that I have said at times when you try too hard, that's when you also jam yourself up.
Oh gosh.
I'm getting that with golf right now because I want to be so good at golf, but when I try so hard, I end up getting jammed up, and anything that I want to do, anything from a swing standpoint, it's going to be off because everything about me is tense. Yeah. I'm going to make the mistake that I don't want to make because I'm so hyper fixated on not making that mistake.
I call it wanting too much, and I know it sounds like a oxymoron. Yeah. Of course, I want it much, but there's this thing what you just described that if you want something too much, it retards your ability to actually get it. It slows you down because your body needs to flow, right? Your mind needs to flow. And if you're so anxious for something and wanting something so bad, life is not linear.
Yeah.
When you play a sport, even when you swing in a golf club, it's not you. Yeah, you got a technique you got to use, but who's to say the wind's blowing a certain way, the hill or the angle in which you have to take your approach? It's not always going to be the same. I don't care even if it's something that like a swinging of a bat.
Right.
The pitch is going to have a different velocity, different angles in which it comes in. But when you're like, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, you're not in the moment.
Right.
You're not flowing. You're not enjoying. You're wanting too much.
Yeah.
And you're missing actually out on life, the whole experience of doing what you're doing. So I think when you get to that place to where you can be focused, you can do what you practice to do, and that's why you do drills over and over again. But then when it's time to compete, just go compete and be in the moment and enjoy that part of it. That's when you free yourself to be the best that you can be as an athlete, I believe, because I've talked about it on many of occasions. Oh my God, I'm in the Super Bowl. I'm in the Super Bowl. What am I going to do? I'm in the Super Bowl. Worst thing you could possibly do is make the moment bigger than what it actually is. Yes, it's a big moment, but you have to treat it like it's the same thing, because really at the end of the day, it is.
It's the same thing.
It's still the same game being played. It's still the same rules being applied. It's just the stakes are greater.
Yeah.
But doesn't mean it's different. Just the stakes are greater. And that's the part where you have to get in that place to where you don't want it too bad, but you want enough that your effort's Herculean. Yeah. Your effort's incredibly great. The amount of energy that you expend to get it, you exhaust yourself. You deplete yourself. That's one thing. But being in this mental space of, I gotta have it, I gotta have it, I gotta have it. That's has to be transformed into, I'm gonna go get it, I'm gonna go get it, I'm gonna go get it.
Yeah. I like, man, you said so many things there. Just the self-talk, making sure your self-talk is positive, because a lot of our self-talk ends up being negative, which I gotta have it, instead of I gotta go get it. Just that differentiation can have tremendous impact. I think something also that you said that reminded me of another docu-series that I watch, and I'm a soccer guy, everybody knows that. There's an All or Nothing series on Amazon Prime. They focus on a soccer team in England, Emma's team, Tottenham, and there was a coach named Jose Mourinho.
Right.
And he came in at it was a pregame speech, and he said something to the effect of, you have already made the mistake before. You've already turned the ball over before in your lifetime. You've already gotten a yellow card before. You've already mistrapped a pass before. So why fear the mistake? You've already made it before. All I care about is your reaction.
Right.
That's monumental, especially for kids. I think in our American culture right now, we are placing so much pressure from U9 up, and it doesn't matter what sport you're talking about. There's a excerpt in my manual that I wrote that is knowing my why. Because I do think sometimes younger and younger, it goes from I'm enjoying this game to I love the game to, well, my dad influenced me to play the game to then I have to. And in order to be great, I have to play 50 games a year and travel across the country. And somewhere along the line, by the time they hit high school, some of them, depending on what sport you're talking about, these kids might be burnt out by 14. And they don't know their why. Why do I love the game? Not why do I play? Why do I play for my dad? No, why do you play? So that when the most intense moments come, you can remind yourself, I chose to do this.
Right. I love how you put that, because my why started off when I was younger. I love playing a game. I love the physical expression of tackling someone or making a move on someone or catching a pass and having that contact and the physical element of the game. Love that. Relish that. Look forward to that. Can't wait for it to start up year in, year out. But then, because of my socioeconomic situation, growing up on welfare, being poor, living in poverty, the why started to change as I got older. So it went from, okay, this is a means to get into college. I want to go D1. That's going to help me hopefully go pro, but also not there even, because my thought was too, if I get to D1, I'm going to get an education so I can have something for life after football. But when I got to that place on the precipice of, okay, you're one of the top ranked cornerbacks in the nation for your draft class coming into the season, then the why started becoming, okay, I got to be perfect. I got to go out there and make sure that every back pedal, every break on the ball, every play is perfect. And then fear of failure kicks in. To like, I can't make a mistake, because if I make a mistake, that's going to hinder my draft prospects. That's going to put me in a position where I can't make as much money. And then, and this is what's going through my head, then I'm going to be poor again. Now, in hindsight, looking at it, it's utterly ridiculous. You have graduated, just to tell you quickly my story, I graduated from college in 4 years. I have an extra year, I take it. So I already have a degree from one of the best public universities in the world. So right there, I'm employable. But again, you're not thinking on those terms because you're young and you're inexperienced in life. And on top of that, I didn't have no one really kicking that to me as well to let me know, like, dude, you're playing with house money now. You got a college education from a great university for free. You're certainly employable in any field that you want to walk into based on what you've done in college alone. Yes, the NFL part is the icing on the cake. But again, it's right there. I already know I'm going to more likely be drafted going into my senior year. I know that. But it's not okay where I'm going to be drafted or when. It's like first round. And I was a second round draft pick. Should have been a first round draft pick. But I could tell you stories another day of why that fell apart. And just the mismanagement on my part, choosing the wrong agent, and also just doing some poor decision making on my part from a maturity standpoint. But the main reason why I bring that up is that it stopped being fun. Playing football. It became drudgery. It became a means to something as opposed to what it should have been all along, which was, I've been blessed with this opportunity to play this and to do this. And yes, it's gotten me places in life that I could not afford to get to without it. But it cannot become, for lack of a better description, an idol. It cannot be what you live for, die for, eat for. It has to just be a part of your being, because if you do take that approach that I took, then you run the risk of becoming too big, or what we just spoke about earlier, and that you want it too bad that you're not enjoying the other aspects of life. And believe me, I tell my kids all the time, if you have a track meet, if you have a soccer match, do not be out to 2 o'clock in the morning doing something else, because that's disrespecting the process. That's disrespecting the game or what you're trying to do and compete for. But at the same time, if you're training and you're consistent and disciplined with your regiment, go out there and have fun. Enjoy just what you just worked for. Don't make it about life or death consequences because of the sport you're playing. Then that way it will remain fun, and that way you'll enjoy it. And on top of that, when you're having fun, you're better at things. It's just
it's funny how that works.
Isn't it? I mean, we're not making this stuff up. It's just a fact of the matter that when you have fun and you enjoy the process, you're better at it.
Again, it's funny how that works, because that's when you hit that. I think all athletes say, I hit a flow state.
A zone, right.
And I'm just flowing. And it's just coming. And, or, Steph Curry says, the hoop looks like an ocean. I can't miss. Or, Brian says everything was fun. It's because I'm enjoying myself.
Right.
And nothing else matters other than the joy that is within me and just enjoying this process.
Right. But if you're worried about, okay, what's this D1 scout thinking about? Or did I get enough good film? Is this going to help my highlight reel and all that stuff? Just go out there and make highlights and have fun. Don't worry about the reel itself. Because I know now, and I would say actually, the kids of this generation are in a tougher spot, because there's more stuff out there that you can put out there. There's more stuff that you're competing with.
Yeah.
And there's more access to information, which requires information. So you got to do what? Provide it, right? So it is tougher. It is more challenging now, but the same premises are still there. Don't make it life or death. Keep it fun. And I know for those parents out there who are like taking their kids to camps, getting individual coaching for them, keep doing those things. But have a balance with where the ideal is, okay, how do I make you better to be the best you can be, as opposed to, well, if you don't do this, then this is not going to happen. Or we need this outcome. Let the outcome take care of itself. Because if you're going into it with the idea that, okay, I want this outcome. I want you to be a state champion. I want you to be a regional champion. I want you to be a D1 athlete. Yeah, have those goals. Nothing wrong with those goals. But don't put that pressure, in my opinion, on the kid. Put the pressure of be the best you can be on them. Work within yourself. Give your best results. Set your goals. Yeah. And but then again, this is where it gets tricky. That can become a problem. Well, I want to run say you run in high school, you run 100 meters, and you ran an 11 flat last year as a sophomore, where I want to run a 10.8 as a junior.
Makes sense.
Yeah, have goals. Nothing wrong. Work towards those goals. The main thing is working towards things, but not obsessing with things. And I'm not even sure if that's given a clear enough definition.
It's so tough.
Because there's ambiguity in what I just said.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I've said oftentimes, like, I think Kobe has said it, I think Bron has said it, and anybody else that we want to reference at a high level is, and even in my clinical sense, all of us have the ability to have some OCD. And when you leverage that OCD of hyperfixation and hyperfocus and obsessiveness over something, that can lead to good.
Right.
But as we all say with superheroes, with great power comes great responsibility.
Right.
And you have to balance it out. And any professional athlete that I've ever talked to, that I've been blessed to talk to, yourself, I have a buddy, Brad Stuver, who plays in the MLS for Austin City FC, Anthony Precourt and all those folks. They always talk about having that off switch, because after you go to your training, after you go to your practice, after you do your rehab or your film study or whatever it may have you be, there's ample hours of the day where you're just left to sit with yourself.
Right.
And having that identity formation outside of your athletic identity is so mightily important. I think it's also important for kids, because there are hopefully young men and young women that will listen to this that will know, come 8th grade, I might be giving up my athletic identity.
Right.
And am I prepared to do that and be okay with losing something that I identify with so heavily? Or there are a lot of seniors, they could be great D2, D3, NAIA, great education, continue to enjoy their sport. They're burnt out, and because they're not D1, it's not good enough, and they just give it up.
Right.
But they're not ready for what comes with giving that up either.
And here's the other thing too with that. There's always going to be exceptions to the rule. I believe that. You may not be in a place where you are a D1 athlete yet, but that D2, D3 experience can give you that confidence, can give you that toolage that you need to take that next step. There have been people who've made it to the pro ranks from those places because they needed that experience in order to get there. And then again, if you're going out there and you put up the numbers, the goals that you set for yourself as a D2 or D3 or even D1 athlete, and say you don't make it to the pros, but the experience was a good one to where you got a solid education and you know you laid it on the line and gave your all and you had success in that. Because ultimately, I think that's really what it boils down to. Just being a success for yourself, not in the sense of I'm selfish, but I accomplished goals for myself. I had this, and I say that with trepidation because it sounds so self-centered.
It does.
But the whole thought is, okay, if I didn't make it to the pros, I didn't make it to college, they have a great high school experience.
Right.
And obviously, we're discussing how do you take that next step to taking what you have in grade school, high school, to those other levels in college and maybe the pros, and how you get there. But I do believe that, again, first and foremost, you have to be confident. You have to believe in yourself. You can only take so much, I believe, from a coach. At some point, you have to go out there and do it, obviously. And then there's only so much you should absorb when they are criticizing you. And at the same time, when you are, say, on the athletic field, enjoy it. But then you say, okay, well, we're losing. I'm ultra competitive too. I hate losing.
Hate it.
I can tell you about all my losses more so than I can tell you about my successes and my victories. I'll think more about a loss something took place 20, 30 years ago than I will winning a Super Bowl. That's how I'm messed up in the head. But the fight in you, the competitor in you, the warrior in you, if you will, to where if the stakes are down and you're still out there battling, at the end of the day, I think really what you want to do is be able to look yourself in that mirror and say you gave your all. And that's the best feeling, that you exhausted yourself and you gave it your all from a training standpoint and from a competitive standpoint, and you didn't let self-doubt, you didn't let the bigger opponent or the faster opponent or the quicker opponent cause you to not go out there and apply yourself. Yeah. You just went out there and you competed and you gave it your all and you didn't care. You just gave it your all and you just, as I say, you lost yourself, you lose yourself. Yeah. And Eminem was on to something. I know it sounds trivial that we play that song a lot, but it's true. What he was saying in those verses is that's really a real reaction that you have. And quickly, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. I mean, you still deal with it as you have different avenues in life. I do sports talk radio, and I have a hard time at times turning that part of me off when I come home. I can be argumentative. I can be combative because sometimes I'm dealing with that environment when I'm on the radio. Yeah. And figuring out, okay, you need to calm down. You need to prove your point. Yeah. You need to listen. And the same thing applies when I'm on the radio as well. Sometimes I need to calm down. I just need to simply sit back and listen. So it's just, again, ultimately what we're getting to, Q, is balance. Yeah. How do you find balance? Because the problem is this. We look at Kobe, we look at Michael Jordan, we look at LeBron, and we idolize those people. We do. Yeah. For what their athletic prowess is and the success they've had. And then we look at people in other avenues of life, the venture capitalists, the politicians of our world who are successful. They all seem to have the quality of being very driven individuals. And you want people to have drive. I think you have to have drive in order to have success. You wouldn't be doing this podcast if you didn't have drive.
Definitely not.
Right?
Definitely not.
So that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. I think really what it boils down to is, again, how do you get to a space to where you're enjoying what you're doing, you're helping in some capacity what you're doing, not only yourself, but other people be the best that they can be, and at the same time, you being the best you can be. Now, I think about the Michael Jordan situation and what that's entailed. His teammates are now all alienated from him, even more so, based upon that documentary that he did.
Yeah. Last Dance.
The Last Dance. Yeah. And so a kid can watch that and be like, well, I want to be like Mike. That was a big thing.
I was a 90s kid. I mean,
that was a huge thing. Right in that. I want to be like Mike. We always sing that song. And again, what Michael Jordan represents from a competitive standpoint, I mean, he's regarded as one of the greatest to do it because of that. But there's still another half of life beyond your athletic playing days. How are you as a friend? How are you as a teammate off the court? Yeah. How are you as a husband, a boyfriend, girlfriend? All those things to where we just see one side of it. And what we do is we push the narrative of the athletic part of it. And because of that, we lose sight that, okay, this dude might really be a jerk in real life. He might be. Yeah. I'm not saying he is because I don't know him on a personal level.
But he might be.
But he might be. And do you really want to raise a kid to be, or do you want to grow up to be that, to where, is it worth it? Yeah. That's a choice you have to make, though. And for some, it might be worth it that, hey, I want to be like that. I want to be in a place to where my teammates don't even want to communicate with me no more because I'm still celebrated as the greatest. Yeah. And some people may go down that path, but there's consequences with it. And the consequence, obviously, is alienation. Yeah. The consequence is probably never being satisfied with anything. And that's the part, too, that's so challenging for an athlete. I don't care. How do you find that balance between, am I content or complacent?
No.
Because you don't want to be complacent. You can't be that and be
No.
successful.
You can't.
I don't care if it's whatever avenue it is in life. But contentment, strive for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So much.
Yeah.
So many. Yeah. Y'all just need to watch that back and just listen to everything that he said, because there are so many little nuggets in there that can. And Je'rod, this is why I love you so much, is because we're talking about sports, but when you speak, there is so much to life that it just flows right into it that you can. Sports is what got us here.
Right.
Everything that I know about how to become a therapist, how to be a good husband, how to be a good friend, good teammate, has come from the platform of soccer.
Mm-hmm.
But now it serves me in a greater purpose.
Right.
And I think sometimes we devalue that even at the youngest ages, because we get so hyper fixated on go, be that awesome athlete. And sometimes we forget the human.
Mm-hmm.
We forget the person. And before we get out of time and wrap up, you've hinted at it a couple of times, but this is a question I've been burning to ask you. As a father that has, in your own right, reached the highest level of athleticism, but now you see your kids wanting to reach those levels, how do you handle that as a father and helping your kids grow that balance? Because I do think hopefully our audience is parents, it's athletic directors, it's directors of clubs, as well as just the kids. I think they need to hear from you as well as to how do we parent our athletes with healthy balance, and we as parents don't get lost in vicarious living or applying too much pressure because of the environment that we're in. Some of that like groupthink, where it's like, well, my neighbors are doing this and their kids are doing that, so my kid's got to do this, or my kid has to buy this, or it has to be like this, or so-and-so is, and then we just completely lose sight of that from a parental standpoint, rather than allowing our kids to walk their own journey.
Right. Well, a couple of things come to mind to me. First, I think back on my athletic experience, and I think about the kids who I grew up with, and some were phenomenal athletes at age 8 and became not so good athletes by the time they got to high school.
Yeah.
They lost ability. So a lot of times when I see parents fretting over their 8-year-old or younger and what they're doing from an athletic standpoint, you're wasting your time. Now, if that child wants to go get hitting lessons, let them go. Help them, because that's teaching them discipline. That's teaching them responsibility. That's also a character trait you want to build up on. Nothing wrong with that. But to think that because your kid is like knocking balls out of the park right now in Little League, that's going to translate to him being even a high successful junior high player, enjoy the process. Have fun with it. Don't make it life and death for that young child.
Right.
Now, just yesterday, Q, I had a situation with my son, Eli. He had a workout in which he plays soccer. And it was a Herculean workout for what they're doing as far as running. And I proposed the idea to him. I said, well, you just got through working out. Are you going to go in the backyard? We got a goal set back there where he can work on his kicks and work on your kicking, working on your dribbling, working on something soccer related. And what I did was I left it to him, because I understand that if you want to be great at something, you're going to have to do extra. And don't get me wrong, there's always exceptions to the rule. There's always going to be the guy who is so talented that, and maybe they just have the right balance, that just doing what they do at practice is enough. I don't think you want to be that guy, though. I think you always want to be working extra, but then we talked about, again, balance of not doing too much. So this is where it gets This is where it gets convoluted, so to speak, in that I'm telling you on one hand to relax and not make it your whole life essence, but also understand too, sometimes it does require extra work and put in extra work to get better at something, and nothing wrong with that. So I leave it to him, and I leave it to her, and I leave it to them. I tell them from my experience, but I don't force it down their throat. Now, if I see them completely doing something that's just totally off track and just totally wrong, and as I say, disrespecting the game or disrespecting the process, then I really interject. Then I really make my voice pronounced and like, that's not going to get it done. That's disrespecting us too for supporting you if you're going to take this approach. But again, I give them leeway to also make decisions. I give them leeway to also be able to become their own person, because I'm not going to be with them every step of the way. They're gonna have to. I'm not going to be on the field with them. I can't do everything for them. I can just tell them my experience. So I think a lot of times as parents, we need to find that balance again of, okay, we see this, we give them our experience, because that's the thing. I don't want to minimize anyone's experience. Your experience is always important. You went through something for a reason. And one of the reasons is to share what you went through so that someone else can learn and gain from it. Hence why we're doing what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important. But I do not want to ever get to a space to where I'm, as you just described, living vicariously through them, that I'm trying to recapture something from my youth or from my glory days, if you will, through them, because that's not fair to them. And again, it puts that unnecessary pressure on them to succeed because you're gaining from it instead of simply supporting them. I mean, we want to see our kids be successful. We don't want to see them fail, obviously. But a lot of times, man, the failure, that's where the greatest lessons truly do come from. That's the greatest opportunity to be a parent. That's the greatest opportunity to support. That's the greatest opportunity to say, okay, what did you learn from this? And build from that. Because success, the hard part with success is staying obviously successful. But failure, you've hit a bottom, right? And then you can hopefully go up from there, stay up to the top and create a plateau, or staying linear still. That's a hard process in its own right. But I do think that as a parent, it should be more about encouragement, teaching and instilling the aspects of discipline, or why you clean your room, or why you wash dishes, why do you do what you're told to do? Because you have to interact with other people, like a coach, for example, who's going to tell you to do something. And if you're in a spot to where you're not used to taking commands from someone, good luck in the world and operating in it, because that's part of the world, in that people are going to give you a command and people are going to give you something to do, and you need to go do it. But again, in regards to sports, simply put, do your best to keep it fun. Make drills fun. And at the same time, I have to be honest and tell you this, there are going to be times when it's drudgery.
Yeah.
And the ones who can take it to that next step are the ones who do it when it is drudgery, are the ones who can do it when they don't feel like doing it. When you can do something when you don't feel like doing it, you are actually competing with yourself now. And you are beating that part of you that wants to remain comfortable and in a state of status quo. Because your body wants to stay in status quo. It doesn't want to exert itself. It doesn't want to be exhausted. But that's where your mind has the ability to do just that. Yeah, I mean, I got nature in my backyard here. I see rabbits, I see birds, I see deer. I don't see them exhausting themselves, only if survival's on the line.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we have the ability when survival is not on the line to exhaust ourselves and to push ourselves, so to speak.
Yeah. It's like getting out of your comfort zone.
Right.
And that's some of the toughest work. And it's funny, listening to you speak about this, you're giving me the opportunity to hear some of the things I say in my own office when I'm talking to parents and I'm talking to them about letting their kids fail. It's not like we want them to get kicked off the team or get suspended, or, there should be some sort of safety net to a certain regard.
To agree, right.
But they still need to feel that.
Of the consequences of it, true, right. I agree with that. And if you're always taking the standpoint that parenting is always protecting my child, now granted, child's going to do something that's life and death consequences, by all means, intercede. I'm not telling you not to do that. But from an athletic standpoint, even from a real life standpoint, if you're always cleaning up their messes and not letting them feel the gravity of what they've done, right or wrong, or in this case wrong, then what are you doing? What are you cultivating? What are you helping build from a human being standpoint? You're not. Because again, at some point you're not gonna be at college with them. You're not gonna be at the workplace with them, and they're gonna need to learn how to operate on their own. So this hovercraft parenting, I'm opposed to it. You gotta let your kids explore. You gotta let your kids develop their own sense of being, but at the same time, we talk about this, and it's been a narrative, the balance of, okay, I have principles. I have beliefs that I'm sharing with you, that I've been trying to instill in you. At some point, either you accept them or you reject them.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm giving you a foundation, because how many kids are right now walking out there with nothing?
Too many.
And they're relying on someone's Instagram posts to define what they think is reality.
Mm-hmm.
And that's scary.
Mm-hmm. It is. Man, it is very, very scary. The amount of conversations I have on that particular topic. And again, how that even informs the athlete. The growth of the athlete is so important right now. Man, Je'rod, thank you so much. This has been a true honor, a true privilege, even being invited into your space, letting us come into the house and film something like this and get your wisdom. I'm very grateful for that.
Oh, man, anytime, dog.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate that. Guys, if you want to connect with us, you can find any of the All Pass information, Facebook, LinkedIn.
Our website, allpass.us.
Again, Colin Barros, the previous podcast will be linked in the description as well. The Mental Fitness Mentality Manual is live. You can find that on our website. And yeah, Je'rod, thank you so much for just taking this time and sharing your wisdom and your life experience with us. And we hope that you guys find something in here that can be a benefit to you. And we'll catch up with you guys next time. Thank you.